So I am standing here in front of this beautiful Finnish lake at the family's mökki, the Finnish summer cabin. And of course, as close as possible to the lake, we also have the log sauna. Now this is a quite amazing sauna. We're very happy with it. And behind the sauna, we also have a lovely log cabin that we can spend the weekends in. So it's of course no surprise that we spend almost every weekend up here. But, like many summer cabins in Finland and probably elsewhere around the world, we have some trade-offs we make to get such a nice sauna, such a nice lake, and such a long distance to our neighbors because we don't want to see them. And so we don't have running water, for example. We have a relatively modern outhouse as our toilet facility. We do have electricity, but we don't have internet. We don't have fiber for sure, but not even cable or even DSL, horror of horrors. So that means that for internet out here, we're relying on mobile networks. Now, mobile networks in Finland are really quite good. We have 5G across most of the places where people are. Out here in the countryside, we have pretty universal 4G. And my phone even gets a signal. It's just pretty slow. So, being a network engineer, I've decided to try and maximize the bandwidth I can get out of the 4G internet I've got here at the summer cabin. So I've got some directional antennas, long-range LTE stuff, and I'm hoping to get 30 megabits a second, which doesn't sound like a lot, but when you've got 4, that's a pretty big improvement. So if you'd like to see how I'm upgrading the long-range LTE wireless at the cabin here, adding Wi-Fi to this whole property, and why I didn't choose Starlink, then come along on this adventure. So I guess before I get too deep into the actual setting up of all the equipment here, let's take a bit of a look at the hardware that I already had and the hardware I'm going to install. So what we had before was this all-in-one 3G, 4G modem from ZTE. So this was provided to us by the ISP. At the time, I guess it was 4G service. This one's kind of old. Nowadays, you get a 5G version or 4G, 5G version from the ISP really easily. Now, like 4G, 5G home internet is really, really common in Finland. The monthly price might be 10 or 15 euros a month for like a summer cabin like this that you're only active half the year. And that's just... Even people that have access to fiber will often choose 4G, 5G because it's cheaper and easier. Taking a look at it a bit closer, I mean, it has all the usual interfaces, so power. This one has phone, which is, I guess, kind of older. I haven't seen a lot of stuff with phones recently. And the usual LAN, WAN, Ethernet, so just a basic router. It doesn't have any external antennas, but it does have these ports on the back that you can pop off where there's 2 SMA connectors. So as an easy approach, I could have bought some Yagis mounted above on the roof, aimed them at the cell tower, and run coax cables down to this. And that probably would have worked fine, but I didn't want to do that because I'm more interested in that. Now the performance of this was bearable enough that it's been here for quite a number of years and still getting use. So like really we're not trying to do like work from home or stuff out at the summer cabin. It's not what the summer cabin's for. Summer cabin is just for relaxing. And so the only thing we really use the internet for is like streaming a hockey game, streaming Netflix at night, that kind of stuff. And so this was kind of sort of cutting it. So I did some speed tests with this. It was installed next to the TV. And since the house is built of logs, obviously the signal attenuation is quite bad. So where it was getting between 4 megabits and 10 megabits depending on the time of day and the weather and stuff like that. And LTE, of course, has a huge amount of variability. So at 4 megabits, that's not enough to stream high def without buffering. And so that really means that depending on the weather, the time of day, etc., we would get buffering a lot of times when streaming. So that's just kind of irritating. So the goal is just to upgrade the bandwidth enough that we never see buffering when we're streaming at high def. So my first change was actually just to put this guy outside. So just moving him on the front porch. Obviously he's indoor rated, so I can't leave him out there forever. But just putting him on the front porch for a day bumped me up to, I don't know, 12 megabits much more reliably. And that was enough to get rid of the buffering and streaming. So I could just tell people every time you come to the summer cabin, put the router outside and plug it in. And that would work. But I'm a network engineer. I want to create something that actually works really well. And so with that, I got some equipment from MikroTik. So first off, I guess this is sort of a basic home router from MikroTik. It's the HAP AX2. So it's their mid-range. They have the HAP AX-S, HAP AX2, and HAP AX3. And they'll have a bit of a different feature set. But this guy has PoE in and out, 5 Ethernet ports, It can take a wide variety of input voltages, and it has built-in 802.11ax, so Wi-Fi 6, and that's fine for a summer cabin like this. Even Wi-Fi 5 would have been fine. And I guess the more interesting one, this is, what is this guy called? This is called the SXT LTE-7. So this guy is a LTE radio, and he's got some sort of directional antennas built in. If I pop the back off, you can see inside here there's two Ethernet jacks. One's PoE in, one's PoE out, and I got the SIM card already inserted in there. And then when I close it up, we got space for the wire. And this is outdoor rated too, so I can mount this on a tree. Now this is actually one of MikroTik's older models, but I chose it because of the cell tower situation around here. So this guy can do LTE, and I believe he can do 900 and 1800 megahertz. Those are the, or probably 2100 as well. So those are the traditional low mid-frequency LTE channels. Now, they have a newer version that looks a little bit nicer. It's a little bit of a dish shape, and it can do 4x4 5G, which sounds awesome because this guy does 2x2 4G. However, in order to get 4x4, you have to be running in an upper band, so like 3.5 gigahertz, 2.3 gigahertz, one of those bands, to get 4x4 5G. And we don't have any towers around here that are 5G. So actually my phone tells me it has 5G, but it's actually, if you look deep in the settings, it's not actually 5G. It's connected to a 5G core network over LTE. So they'll do anything to market 5G. But around here, there are a number of towers. I look in a cell mapper, and there are about 4 towers that I thought I might be able to pick up. All of them are doing 800 megahertz LTE, so that's the former TV frequencies in the lower 800 megahertz band. 2 of the towers also do 1800 megahertz LTE. One of the towers does 3.5 gigahertz 5G. Now, just driving around the area, there is no way I'm getting 3.5 gigahertz 5G in this forest. And I can't even get the 1800 megahertz LTE. So I'm actually aimed over a hill because that's the closest 4G tower. And even if I aim this guy in the direction that I think one of the higher frequency towers should be, he's not picking them up. So I'm just too far away from them, even though they look decent on a map. So essentially I have one tower available to me, and it's 820, 850, something like that megahertz. So lower 800 megahertz band. This guy will perform just as well as the more expensive 5G model, in my case, because there are no better towers around. So real like genesis for this project came, I don't know, 5 or 6 months ago in the dead of winter. So as you may have heard, we get quite a lot of snow here in Finland. So after a particularly bad snowstorm, there were a lot of reports around the country, different trees that had fallen down, bad damage, stuff like that. And so we were worried, of course, about the summer cabin. Were we going to come back in the summer and find a tree and fall on our outhouse, something like that? But it's kind of remote here. So a lot of these forest trails and stuff, we can drive on fine in the summer, but they're not really maintained in the winter. So we were looking at maybe several kilometers of hiking, maybe snowmobiling, maybe a helicopter, something like that, to get just to take a look at if there was any damage here. And so we really didn't know until spring when we could drive out here. And thankfully everything was fine. There were no trees down here at the summer cabin, but we were worried for a minute there. And so of course my mind went to how could I have solved this problem with technology? And I was thinking, could we have a camera somewhere here that we can circle around and take a look at the whole property? Maybe 1 or 2 or something like that. Not even recording. I mean, theft isn't really a problem out here in the middle of nowhere, but just like making sure that everything's okay when we're not here for 6 months in the winter. And the internet access we had was just not good enough for that before. So then I thought about how I had one of these SXTs before in the US. Maybe you saw my video on that. I had it hooked up with T-Mobile. Maybe I'll have some clips or something of that here. But I wanted to test different IPv6 multi-homing mobile network stuff. And that's why I got that. And I did a bit of testing off camera. I never really made any videos on the other testing stuff I did with that. But I had some fun with that, but I wanted to get back to testing some sort of mobile network stuff because that's something that really interests me. So I hit up my friends at MikroTik, the guys that make this, and I was like, hey, I'm looking for something for my summer cabin. Do you think this would work out well for me? And they said, you know, we actually have a newer model of this, the 5G one. What do you think about that one? And I dove in January, looked at the different cell towers in the area on the maps. That's when I concluded that I was definitely not going to be getting 5G here. And the advantages of the 5G outdoor mounted router from MikroTik weren't really apparent because of the cell towers I'm connecting to in my setup here. And so I chose the older SXT model, which is this one. And so they sent this over to me, and they also sent the HAP AX. So Microtik was kind enough to send these to me way back in February, and I'm just getting around to taking a look at them now because obviously I couldn't get here until about a month ago. But so thanks to Microtik for that. But this is something that's definitely been on my radar for a long time, was to upgrade the wireless here, and I think this will finally be the time I can do it. So now that I'm here with the equipment, and I can set this down here on my computer. Now this is not just an LTE modem, this is a full-on router. So this runs Microtik Router OS 7, it can do full IPv4, IPv6 routing. Microtik doesn't really restrict any features based on hardware in general. So this can run BGP, I mean if you have a way to run BGP over LTE you can do that. Or if you just want to use it as a 2-port 100 meg router, I mean it can do that too. But so I got this guy hooked up as a router. So he's taking in my IP address and IPv6 from the cell carrier and spitting that out on a LAN. So this is a LAN port. This is not like a internet connection. So I can plug my PC right in. I can use the PoE splitter and I can just sort of aim this around and see what kind of signal strength I get. So I did that. I just aimed it around by hand. Then I mounted it onto my tripod, which unfortunately I couldn't film because my tripod was being used. And I put it a couple different places around the property. So I put it on some of the different boardwalks, aimed at some of the cell towers. I climbed up on the roof and I put it there, aimed at some of the cell towers. I hiked out in the woods, put it in different places, to try to come to a conclusion of what was helping the signal strength and the download speeds. So I'd let it sit there for 15 minutes, test, download, upload a couple times, do speed tests, that kind of stuff. And I eventually concluded that the roof was a pretty good place, but further up the hill was better. So we're down in a valley. There's a pretty steep hill directly behind the cabin. So not going that far up the hill got us to a higher elevation than the tripod on top of the roof did. Now I only brought 40 meters of outdoor rated cable with me because that's what I found at the hardware store. And so I have a 40 meter pre-terminated cable. I'm plugging a pre-terminated end into this guy. Then I'm going to cut the other end off and run it through the wall. And so I eventually found about halfway up the path, stairs we have up the hill, there's a nice tree that was easy enough for me to get to, and I mounted this as high up as I could reach from the step stools I had available, and I got a pretty decent signal. So the best speed test I've gotten today was 27 megabits. Most of them are over 20. Some of them are as low as 15, depending on the weather and the rain over the last 24 hours. But that's a pretty big improvement over what we had before. And even at 15 on the worst case, we're still going to be able to stream high def just fine. So now that I've found where I'm going to put this guy and got a test network set up, just with this guy plugged into my laptop, now it's time to do like the real proper setup, get all my config settled on the Microtik side on both this and the access point, get all the wire wired in. So I guess I'm in for a bit of a long day drilling and cutting cable. So the first place I ran the wire was from the inside to the outside. So I had to drill a hole through the logs. I had to have a long auger bit for this. Once I finally got through, I cut the end off, pushed the cable through, and came in to terminate it just to make sure it still worked. Now this cable used the TIA568A standard. Not my normal one, but I stuck with it anyway. I had a bit of a hard time doing, I mean I always have a hard time doing this because I don't do it very often. But I managed to get the crimp on and it worked my first try. So after that, I neatly stapled the cable up to the logs, just following the existing cable line, trying to make it look neat. All the wiring in the cabin is surface mount on top of these logs anyway, so I mean, you see it all. Tucked it all behind the TV as neatly as possible. Then I had a long day stapling it up to the boardwalks, following the outside of the handrail, that kind of stuff. It ended up looking much nicer than you see in this video, but I was too tired and didn't take any pictures. And I was so tired that after I was all done, I immediately went to go light the sauna so we could have a nice relaxing evening, and didn't film the rest of that. And just to get ahead of questions of why didn't I just use Starlink, here is me on the roof, standing at about the center of the roof near the chimney, trying out the Starlink app. And guess what? It says there are way too many trees here to get anything good, which I totally expected. There's a ton of trees here in the finished forest. So I tried a spot as close to the front of the roof as I could reasonably get without falling off, and once again, it was really awful. And I mean, you can see there's small trees down by the dock even, so unless I build a pretty decent tower, I'm not really getting around these guys, unless I maybe put it like on a buoy out in the lake or something. So now I'm back home after a very relaxing long weekend at the mökki, and I can tell you that the internet was working very well after this setup. So first off, I guess the MikroTik configuration. So I have two MikroTik devices involved here, the HAP AX2 inside the cabin and the SXT out on the tree. I've configured the SXT as the router. So the default config for all MikroTik routers is essentially to allocate one port as the WAN, bridge the rest of them together as LAN, and enable the firewall with default deny in, default allow out, and do DHCP prefix discovery on WAN. So in the case of the SXT, the LTE modem is the WAN interface, and we don't exactly do DHCP over that because we get a IP address and a /64 v6 prefix over the 3GPP BTP context. So those get assigned to the WAN interface by default. Now, it still tries to do DHCP v6 prefix delegation over the WAN interface. Some ISPs do support that, but this one doesn't. So I had to change one setting where I assigned the /64 v6 prefix from the PDP context, and I get to choose which interface it gets assigned to, and I assigned it to LAN. So now I have native v6 on LAN, but I only have one subnet in this PDP context. So that was the only change I had to make on the SXT. Down on the HAP AX squared, it was configured by default as a router. I don't want to do double routing, of course, so I just want that to be an access point. I know a lot of people probably would have thought that would be the natural location for a router, but the one on the tree makes sense here. So I basically removed the default config, bridged all the interfaces, physical and Wi-Fi, created a Wi-Fi config, applied that to both the 2.4 and the 5 GHz interfaces, and it's just acting as an access point, and it's PoE powering the SXT. So if you want an even cheaper device, you could have got something like this. This is a HAP AXS, so it came out a little bit after the AX2, and it has similar interfaces. It has SFP, so if you want to do fiber. I was originally thinking of doing this at the cabin instead, and then I would run fiber up to the tree, which would have been better for lightning isolation, but I still have to run power up to the SXT, and lightning would still end up killing the SXT, and the HAP AX squared isn't very expensive, so I decided to just do it as I've done it now. You could, of course, use a cheaper access point from just about any vendor because it's just an access point. I'm not doing any routing on it. So the fact that MikroTik can do BGP essentially for free doesn't really help me here. Now, for those of you longtime viewers, I've got a bit of a setup on the table here that's coming in an upcoming video. So I got my mono gateway. I'm building my sort of ultimate home router firewall for me, which might not be for you, but I'm doing that on the mono gateway. I've also got a Protectly firewall running Kali, and these two guys are basically testing each other, so they're just hooked up back to back, so I can emulate a bunch of clients on here and test it with a mono gateway. And of course I've got my trusty HAP AXS here that I use for like just about everything network related. So you can get this guy for 79 bucks. If you don't want Wi-Fi, you can get the Hex S for 69 bucks, which can run ARM containers and do BGP routing, not at very fast, but I mean BGP routing at like 500 megabits is not bad for 69 bucks. So thanks to MikroTik for sending over the devices they sent over. They are very great to work with, no pressure on them to make videos, stuff like that. They're not paying me, they just sent the equipment, so take with that what you will. If you're interested in buying into my merch to support me, I have this beautiful Home Lab, Your Own Personal Data Center t-shirt. You can find this and more linked down in the description below for my Ko-fi. If you want to chat with me about this setup, I have a link down below to my Discord server as well. If you want to buy into these products, I'll probably have some links to them down below. And I guess I'll see you guys on the next adventure.